What's up, Ranger Nation? It's your boy Jerome. I'm here today with a special edition of Ranger Talk. And in this Ranger Talk, we're going to talk about Power Rangers RPM because today, March 7th, 2019, marks the 10-year anniversary of Power Rangers RPM. It premiered on ABC Kids on March 7th of 2009. This was actually supposed to be the last season of Power Rangers, and at that time it was, because when Power Rangers RPM ended, there was no more, seasons of Power Rangers coming until 2011, which we got Power Rangers Samurai. But in 2010, we got the remake of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, which was comic book style. But that's neither here nor there. And it's also an anniversary because I think today marks 23 years that Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie, came out. But again, we're here to talk about Power Rangers RPM. And, RPM, I absolutely loved it. I loved Lost Galaxy. I told you guys that. I've done a video about that. I love RPM. And I'm actually liking Beast Morphers, although we only have one episode, but I'm here for it. And if you guys remember the opening of Power Rangers RPM, a computer virus has built armies of robotic soldiers and taken control of our world. But there's still one place we can be safe. The only hope we have left is Power Rangers RPM. Get in gear. I love RPM. So without further ado, we're just gonna keep on and go on into RPM. All right, so RPM was the Sentai footage of Go Onger. So this season had 32 episodes in it. So the whole premise of Power Rangers RPM was it was post-apocalyptic time. A computer virus by the name of Venjix had, like the opening said, he built armies of robotic soldiers that took over the world. And there was only one surviving place that humans lived at, and that was the domed city of Corinth. I'm gonna go down the line of our characters. So we had Scott Truman, who was the Red Ranger, Ranger Red, Ranger Operator Series Red. You had Ziggy Grover, who was the Green Ranger, Ranger Green, Ranger Operator Series Green. You had Summer Lansdowne, who was the Yellow Ranger, Ranger Yellow, and Ranger Operator Series Yellow. You had Dylan, who was the Black Ranger, Ranger Black, and Ranger Operator Series Black. You had Flynn McAllister, who was the Blue Ranger, Ranger Blue, Ranger Operator Series Blue. And then you had Jim and Gemma, who were both the Gold and Silver Rangers, or Ranger Gold and Ranger Silver, and Ranger Operator Series Gold and Ranger Operator Series Yellow. And then, we had our villains, who was Venjix. We had Tenaya 7, and also known as Tenaya 15. You had General Shifter. You had General Crunch. And then you also had Kilobyte. Now, when I was actually looking at this, they listed Fresno Bob as a villain. But I guess Fresno Bob was a part of the cartel. So I don't know how they considered Fresno Bob a villain. He wasn't technically an ally of the Rangers, but he wasn't. I didn't think he was a villain. Like, wow. But for the allies of the Power Rangers, you had Dr. K, you had Colonel Truman, and you had Hicks and Vasquez. So, like I said, the story was, it was a post-apocalyptic world, and, everyone was trying to live in peace in Corinth, but Venjix was in his evil attack bots to try to infiltrate Corinth, try to bring down Corinth's shields so that he can gain access to Corinth and, wipe out Corinth. But, Dr. K, at the time, Dr. K, we only saw Dr. K from so there was a monitor, but you could only hear Dr. K's voice, and Dr. K's voice was distorted. It sounded like Dr. K was a guy. So for, I don't know how many episodes, I think it was until the episode Dr. K that we finally found out who Dr. K was. So this story, they gave a little history about what happened in the first episode. So then outside of the dome, we see a black older muscle vehicle driving around. And this is where we're introduced to Dylan, who is driving around in a wasteland, and also Ziggy is in a wasteland with him. And so they're riding the Venjix barricade, and Ziggy, who was actually, like, Ziggy is my favorite character of RPM. You know, he told Dylan it was still daylight, so, you know, they needed to wait until nightfall before they try to make it to Corinth. Dylan was not feeling that. Dylan said, you know what, I'm going straight for the Vengeance barricade and we're going to get through it. So, you know, they raised the shields. Anytime that they would raise the shields, you know, that would leave them vulnerable to an attack by Vengeance. So when they lowered those shields for Ziggy and Dylan, Vengeance sent one of his attack bots. And that's when Dr. K sent her team in. Her team at that time consisted of Flynn, Scott, and Summer. And I also have to mention that Scott Truman was the third African American to play the Red Ranger. The first was Selwyn Ward, who played TJ Johnson, and then we had Jack. So yeah, and then we had Scott Truman, who's the third, and now we're on our fourth, which is Devin on Power Rangers Beast Morphers. So, and also a little bit of backstory about Summer's character. So originally Summer was not supposed to be Summer, and you know, the young lady that played her, Rose McCliver, I can't pronounce her last name. She was not originally cast to play Summer. She actually, you know, like I said, the Yellow Ranger's name in the beginning, her name was not Summer. Her name was Kayla, and I forgot what that girl's name was that was supposed to play Kayla. But you know, I don't even know when they switched her, but they did switch her. So a little bit about Dylan. Dylan is a human who has, you know, cybernetic, you know, modifications in his body due to Vengeance. So, in the first episode, you know, like I said, the, you know, three Rangers, red, blue, and yellow, they morphed, and you had Ziggy and Dylan in the background, and then they called on their Zords, and you know, the Grinders were going to ambush Ranger Yellow, and Dylan saved her. And then, you know, Colonel Truman and his people came and arrested Flynn and not Flynn, but Ziggy and Dylan. So in the next episode, you know, they had to try to find someone who was capable enough of, you know, handling the Ranger hardware for Ranger Black, or Ranger Operator Series Black. That, I loved RPM, but that bothered me. That got on my nerves the entire season. It took me a long time to get used to hearing Ranger Black or Ranger Operator Series Black or Ranger Operator Series anything. That was really what got on my nerves with RPM the most, was the fact that Dr. K kept saying Ranger Operator Series. Like, it was like a nails on a chalkboard for me. I was okay with Ranger Black and Ranger Blue and Ranger Green and Ranger whatever. Actually, I would prefer her to call them by their names, which she did eventually start calling them by their names, but she still was kind of hesitant to call Ziggy by his name. So, you know, when they were trying to find a Ranger that could harness the power of the Black Ranger, you know, Summer was, you know, wanted them to use Dylan. But, you know, Scott and Flynn were not really on the same wavelength as Summer. More so Scott. You know, he was just like, I don't know what you see in this guy. So then they go and make a plea to him. And, you know, they had him chained up. And he wanted to pick his color, but unfortunately he didn't get to choose his color. So then, you know, he says, okay, I'll come, but you have to bring Ziggy with me. And they were like, give us a good reason why we should bring Ziggy with you. The good reason was shadow puppets, because Ziggy is good at doing shadow puppets. So after, you know, the team of three turned into a team of four, they then had to they had to find someone to be the Green Ranger. So they held auditions, which I don't know why they allowed Ziggy to hold the auditions, but Ziggy was holding auditions. Everybody that was in line was not a good fit for a Ranger candidate. But then, you know, there was this girl that was in the line that Ziggy saw, and he had to have her. Her name was Tanaya Sevenson. I think that was her name. I'm pretty positive it was Tanaya Sevenson. So, you know, Ziggy has her, you know, they have her on, you know, trying, you know, they're testing her to see if she's going to be a good candidate for being a Ranger. And she passed with flying colors. Well, the reason why she passed with flying colors is because she is Tanaya 7, Vengeance human infiltration attack bot. She is your subconscious. I don't remember everything that she said because that was a long speech, and I was always with Ziggy and them. Like, that was a rhetorical question. Like, who are you? That was rhetorical. But like I said, she was a Vengeance human infiltration attack bot. Once Ziggy found out about that, Dr. K wanted Ziggy to do everything that he could to protect the Green Morpher. So Ziggy having to protect the Morpher, Ziggy had to bond with this Morpher. So Ziggy then became the Green Ranger. And Dr. K was like, they were all like, Ziggy, you can't be a Ranger. But again, you guys told him to do whatever he had to do to protect the Morpher. So he did that by bonding to it. So then in the next few episodes, these are solo episodes for each Ranger. The first one, I believe it was Ranger Red, where, no, let's see. Okay, so actually the first one was Ranger Green, where we found out a little bit more about Ziggy. We found out why, found out about his criminal past. And we found out that he angered the cartel because he gave black market medical supplies to an orphanage, which I was like, oh, that's kind of sweet. That was really sweet. And then we also had an episode named Ranger Red. And we found out a little bit of backstory about Scott. We found out about his brother Marcus. Were they in the Air Force together? Yeah. And we found out that, while they were flying in the sky, Vengeance's army took out Marcus, but Scott survived. And Scott, when he ejected from his plane, he met Summer, and Summer helped him get back to Corinth. Also in this episode of Ranger Red, Scott went into the wasteland to get a part from Marcus's his plane, so that Ziggy and Dylan Zord could combine to be the Valve Max. No, was it? It's the Valve Max Megazord. So then in the next one we had Ranger Yellow, which was a 2-part of Summer. In Ranger Yellow, we really saw a change in Summer, because Summer was a spoiled rich kid, with rich kid problems. I'm so glad Summer changed, because Ranger Yellow, when I watched the first part 1 of Ranger Yellow, I was like, God, how did Dr. K pick her to be a Ranger? But then in the second episode, you saw a little bit more. I'm like, okay, that's when we found that, when Vengeance attacked, she was kind of on her own. All her friends had, up and left her and disappeared on her. And she was, had to fend for herself. And her butler, Andrews, he died. Oh, and I was really sad when Andrews died. I'm like, aw. But, we saw the progression of Summer in part 2. Then we also saw that her parents came in and they wanted Summer to go through with this wedding to this arranged marriage. And I can't remember what Wentworth or something like that. And they, in this episode, Tanaya, she was trying to get the Lansdowne diamond, but they tricked her. And I always thought that was cool with Tanaya, when she used to take her hand off and it just run around like that thing on the Addams Family. But Ranger Yellow, like I said, we saw the progression of Summer. And then Ranger Blue, we saw Flynn. He was struggling with his past before everything happened, with his dad and him being a mechanic. Yeah. And then on Dr. K, we found out a little bit. Actually, we found out a lot about Dr. K in the episode titled Dr. K. This is where we found out Dr. K's upbringing. She was brought up in the Alphabet Soup think tank, and she was never able to go outside. She wasn't able to do anything that a normal child could do. And then while she was in Alphabet Soup, she created the Vengeance virus, which is what took over the world. And I know Dr. K felt bad for it. And speaking of Dr. K and the Vengeance virus, I'm a veer off just a little bit, and the reason why I'm veering off is because I see some similarities between Beast Morphers and RPM, and I'm wondering when it comes to Beast Morphers, like, where did Evox come from? Because someone had to have created Evox. I don't think Evox just came out of nowhere. So I'm really anxious to see where Evox came from. You know, who in Grid Battle Force created Evox? Were they trying to were they trying to do it, or were they not trying to do it? Was it like Dr. K and she just, it just got out of hand at some point? So I'm really, really interested to see how Beast Morphers plays out. And like I said, it's just, you can kind of see some comparisons with Beast Morphers and RPM, but not very many, but you can see some kind of similarities between those two. So next we'll move. Okay, so then toward the middle of the season, Dylan was starting, well, this was when Vengeance was trying to, get, set the Rangers up by using Dylan, who has absolutely no memories of his past. So, someone, I think it was either one of the attack boss or if it was Tanaya 7, but someone, fed Dylan some fake memories, and they kept making him see this city called Omega City. So, the Rangers took the Go Andra and they went into the wasteland to go to Omega City. When they are on their way to Omega City and they're getting close to Omega City, Dylan is like, I don't recognize any of this. None of this looks familiar. And, they're like, well, let's wait and get there. Maybe something more will come to you. So then, they get to Omega City and Dr. K tries to send a transmission to them because she's figured out that there's a chip. The chip and his memories are coming from the same place. Or was it? It was something. I can't remember which one it was. And I just watched RPM a few days ago. But at the end of the day, Vengeance set the Rangers up. So while they were near Omega City, this is where we were introduced to Rangers Gold and Silver, also known as Gem and Gemma, who were in the wasteland. So yeah, Rangers Gold and Silver joined the team. So then, a few episodes later, we see this episode where Gem and Gemma, who were the Boom Twins, they love to blow things up, and they talked in unison of one another. Like, they finished each other's sentences, which at first, when I first saw Gem and Gemma, I'm like, I know they cannot be doing this for the entire season. And they did. And then when I first started, I'm like, oh my God, Gem and Gemma are going to work my last nerve with this, finishing each other's sentences. But once I got used to Gem and Gemma, I'm like, okay, cool. I can deal with Gem and Gemma. So, like I said, after we met Gem and Gemma, we saw them one episode. They were humming this song, and it's very similar to this tune that has, Dylan has in his watch. And he asked him, where did you hear that tune from? And Gem and Gemma told him that they heard the tune from a blind girl. It's a tune that's in her brother's watch. And then Dylan played the tune, and that's when Dylan figured out, so I'm the blind girl's brother. So now the mission is to find the blind girl and rescue her, because Gem and Gemma were held in a Vengeance camp, held prisoner. So Dylan fears that his sister is still held in that same camp. So, they set a plan to go and, rescue Dylan's sister and all the other people that are held prisoner by Vengeance. So they do go in there to do that. And then there's a doomsday device there. So, they blow up the factory, and the doomsday device, it's launched. But Dr. K sent, Gem and Gemma on a special mission to reconfigure the doomsday device so that it can be something for them. And she turns it into a blue flying whale, which I was in agreement with Ziggy. Like, like, a whale, of all things, a whale. But she's like, would you rather be a whale or a deadly, a deadly doomsday device? Well, whatever. So the blue whale combined with Gem and Gemma's Zords, which was a chicken and what was the other one? I can't remember. But yeah, that one, it combined to be the Sky Rev Megazord. So then in another few episodes, episode 24, I believe, we got introduced to the Paleo Megazord. And this is also the episode where Colonel Truman found out that Dr. K was the one who released the Venjix virus. And he wanted to arrest her. But, you know, when the Paleo Megazord got free, it was a Zord that, you know, it was uncontrollable at that time. But he let Dr. K be free so that she could, you know, get the Zord on their side. All right. So then, you know, I don't remember what episode it was, but a few episodes we see Dylan. So actually, let me go back just a little bit to the episode where they blew up the factory. So Dylan, you know, he was like, "Where's my sister?" And you know, Flynn and Ziggy told him they got everybody out of the factory, so his sister was not there. But you know, Jim and Gemma told them that they were in her cell and there was a key there. So in this another episode, Dylan was like, you know what? He realized that the keys fit together, so he put them together and he sticks them in his watch, and it plays this a tune. And it's a tune that's very familiar to everyone. It's The Farmer and Adele, which Tanaya 7 always whistles it. So then Dylan figures, oh my God, Tanaya, she's my sister. So then Dylan goes and tells Tanaya that, you know, they're brother and sister. At first, she didn't believe him. But then once she goes back to Venjix's palace, she finds information to prove that she and Dylan are actually brother and sister. So, so then we had this episode where Dylan and Tanaya, they went to Venjix's palace to get some codes so that they can stop an attack bot. And, you know, with those codes, Dr. K was able to form the Ultra Zord. So, you know, Dylan in this episode, he did not know whose side Tanaya was on, because Tanaya actually turned him into Venjix. But, you know, she ended up proving to be on their side. Now, once they left the palace, you know, Dylan told Tanaya to wait for him, but she did wait for them. But we also got introduced to Kilobyte. I don't remember what episode we got introduced to Kilobyte in, but Kilobyte, he captured Tanaya, and when he captured her, he turned her from Tanaya 7 to Tanaya 15, and she had a new mission. Her mission was solely to serve Venjix at this point. So then we're moving on to the 2-part finale. So in this one, we had Venjix. He captured Dr. K and Ziggy. He deleted Jim and Gemma. And then also in the finale, the hardware that was inside of Dylan, it started to take over him. So he was starting to become a little bit evil. So then in the last episode, Tanaya, she turns back good. Kilobyte was destroyed. General Crunch was destroyed. Shifter had been destroyed a few episodes before. But in the end, the Rangers did end up defeating they defeated Venjix with some help, because the thing that was at the top of the dome, it fell down and it hit Venjix, and that's what defeated Venjix. Like I said, Venjix, he deleted Jim and Gemma, but Dr. K, she got a 1-up on Venjix, and she brought Jim and Gemma back. Ew, that is so disgusting. Sorry, y'all. But that was RPM in a nutshell. It was a great season. I know I probably rushed through this. I didn't go as long as I did with my Power Rangers Lost Galaxy 20-year review, but I gave a brief summary of Power Rangers RPM. So like my video, leave your comments, subscribe to my channel, and I will see Ranger Nation again on Saturday for episode number 2 of Power Rangers Beast Morphers.